I'm the chair of the Greater Columbia GCACH, and we're going to start with some introductions, and we'll start here in the room, and then we'll go to the phone. So I think we'll start with Chelsea. And are all the microphones on? Mm-hmm. Okay, so why don't we start with you, and we'll go around the room.
And I can just pass this one around. So I'm Chelsea Chapman, and I'm the assistant for Greater Columbia.
Dana Otis with Lord's Health, representing behavioral health.
Eric Golden with Kennewick Fire Public Safety.
Leslie Stolmaker, Educational Service District 123 Education.
Martha Lamb in Columbia County Public Health and Garfield County Health District Public Health.
Diana Montesipan with PHPW.
Ronnie Batchelor, Lord's Health Network, representing consumer.
Patrick Jones from Eastern Washington University, representing himself.
Carrie Green, Senior Life Resources, representing philanthropy.
Cheryl Woodard, Greater Columbia ACH.
Angela Gonzalez, Community Health of Central Washington, and I'm just here for that practice transformation agenda item.
Sandra Suarez, Yakima Valley Farm Workers Clinic, representing FQHC.
Brian Gibbons, Estrella Sunnyside Hospital, representing providers.
Sierra Foster, Estrella Sunnyside Hospital. Amelia Davis, Coordinating Care.
Martin Sanchez, Greater Columbia ACH.
Ruben Peralta, Greater Columbia ACH.
Wes Lucky, Greater Columbia.
Sam Riddell, Greater Columbia.
Penny Bell with Ideal Balance.
Rachel Gatz with Greater Columbia. Becky Cole with Greater Columbia ACH.
Jenna Shelton, Greater Columbia.
Everybody? Okay, and on the phone, I think I see Darlene.
Yes, thank you. I am representing community agencies and faith-based agencies.
Okay, and is there anybody else named up there, Chelsea?
Nope, just caller 1, 2, and 3.
Okay, so callers 1, 2, and 3. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Diane Taylor from Greater Columbia ACH.
Anybody else on the phone?
Dan Ferguson. Yeah, Dan Ferguson, representing Workforce.
Dan Ferguson, he lives. Aloha, Dan. Okay, is there anyone else on the phone? Okay, all right. Well, so welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. Happy pre-Thanksgiving. We always start the meeting by asking everyone to take note of the attestation of the conflict of interest and self-dealing transactions. And either now or when we get to an agenda item, if you feel you have a conflict, we hope that you will speak up. And so the first thing that we have on the is the consent agenda. We have one item, which is the board minutes. And so hopefully you've had a chance to look at those, and I would welcome somebody making a motion regarding the board minutes.
A motion.
Who was that, Sandra? Motion from Sandra. Is there a second?
I second.
Second from Ronnie. Is there any discussion? If not, then all in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Thank you. So Jen and Martine are going to talk about the report, the cohort tracker.
So, Madam Chair, for the convenience of Angela, I was wondering if we could move on that action item to the front so we can get that nomination.
Sure.
If she needs to go, then she can.
But you're welcome. Okay. So
this would be agenda item, the first one, practice transformation work group nomination. And I'll just direct everyone to the S-bar. This is a situation that we have 2 vacancies on the practice transformation work group. This is a paid participation, and so it generally has a lot of attendance because we pay $1,125 per meeting. It's a $5,000 appointment. So And it's important that we have these providers at the table to look at and monitor the progress of our practice transformation cohorts. They help direct our measures and our toolkit and then very actively involved. So having somebody not on that committee has been, there's been an absence. So we want to fill those positions. There's one position that Lily Gonzalez vacated in June, and then Dr. Mike Maples is on the PTW. And as we know that he retired in August, and so the suggestion is to recommend Angela Gonzalez to replace Dr. Mike Maples on the practice transformation work group. We have not heard yet from Russ Myers from Virginia Mason Memorial on his appointee, but that would be the staff recommendation is to appoint Angela.
Okay, so if you haven't found it in your packet, we have the SBAR for the practice transformation work group, and also Angela's resume. So does anyone have any questions about this or the process? If not, is there a motion to approve the nomination?
A motion to approve nomination.
Second.
Motion from Sandra and Eric. Second from Eric. Is there any discussion? Okay, not, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Welcome, Angela.
Thank you. Look forward to it. Thank you for having me today. I was hoping to work on the information group, and thank you for lunch. It was wonderful.
And Angela, we do have an upcoming PTW meeting in December, so you'll be getting notified as to the date of that. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angela.
Can I make one comment about the PTW?
Yep.
So I did want to let everyone know that Brian Sandoval has resigned, effective in January, so he too will also need to be replaced. So he'll be still available for the December meeting, but the 2020, starting 2020, he won't be available anymore. He's moving on to co-manage, and will be doing some great work where Paulus and I can't remember the other group, co-manage, combined forces. So he'll be still fighting the good fight for everyone, but not under the YBFW umbrella.
Will you guys be making a recommendation then?
We're discussing that. We still have to figure, it's just been announced, so, but I just want to give you notification of that.
So, and I forgot to mention, when you're speaking, if you would please remember to speak into the microphone. We'll keep it in my head for so long. So thank you for that. Okay, so we'll back up to the reports and updates, and so now are we ready to go on to the cohort package? Whatever you want to do, what's your pleasure?
We'll do the cohort.
Cohort.
So, this is cohort 1, and you guys are familiar with these trackers. This just has the date as to when the workbooks were turned in. Most of them you guys will see 4/15, 10/15, and 10/15. The dates will vary in some, but that's it's on the 15th of the April, July, and October, because sites have 15 days when the quarter ends to still turn in their workbooks. And most of them turn them in, that last date, because it gives them more time to gather their data. But these are just Jenna's sites. Can you go to all 4, Chelsea, at the bottom? On the tabs.
The tabs.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there we go. So this has all the organizations, not by site, but it's more on the organization. And then cohort 2 turn them in, their third quarter that they turned in. They're currently well underway for quarter 4, and they are doing a good job. So that's cohort 1, and then we'll jump over to cohort 2. Cohort 2, they just started. They're currently in quarter 2. And so we usually, so we got dates on here, but they all turned in their quarter one, reporting workbooks. They, they're on their second quarter, and cohort 2, if you guys remember, is made up of the 17 behavioral health and SUV organizations that transitioned into IMC at the beginning of the year. So that's made up of, that's cohort 2 that you guys are looking at right here. And then later down the road, you guys will see a third tracker for our third cohort that we are planning on having that, we're going to talk about later. But those are the trackers that you guys have in your packets as well that you guys can see, which organizations we are working with and what sites. And if you guys have any questions, please approach Jenna, myself, Matt, and then we're more than happy to chat with you.
So I just have a question. So is comprehensive healthcare, what's happening with that? That lots of blank on that.
That would be more cheap.
We just need to update on the dates on there.
Okay, but they're on board.
They're
Working on it.
yeah. We have so many trackers that we have to update. And we might miss one. But they are turned in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay.
Guess it's wet.
So this cover story is informational when it relates to the clinical data repository, which is tied to One Health Board, the state health information exchange that works with healthcare authority. I think One Health Board is the exclusive provider for healthcare authorities. I'm not quite sure what to say about this. For new subscribers, I'll just mention that for the first year, when you come on to the clinical data repository, let me back up and say that clinical data repository aggregates information from electronic health record feeds that go straight up to One Health Board, and it also incorporates claims feeds from the 5 managed care organizations throughout the state. In the Greater Columbia, there are only 4 that service us. In any case, they pull information in, and that information can be pulled out by provider organizations if they want to do profiling around individual patients. There's some use cases where that becomes useful. For the first year, for individuals who come on to the clinical data repository, they have free access to it. They can't necessarily upload it, but they can look at information in there. And right now, helping here, I think behavioral health agencies are not putting information into the clinical data repository right now, but again, they can view patients that they're managing to extract data to help them with care management and care coordination. And SUD, thank you. Anybody have any questions about that, Rhonda?
Yeah, so I know you upload information on a regular basis. Is anybody actually getting information out? Really? I mean, you know that for a fact. I've not talked to any provider organization that's actually getting information out of One Health.
I was actually talking to Merit the other day because they jumped on One Health Board. Even though they're not primary care, they're still able to view information. There are some challenges to getting data out of this, for some specific patient populations. They have over 100 patients that they see in their Ellensburg site. And they jumped in and, once they got access, they went in and looked at 2 patients, that just popped up in their head. It's like, oh, let me look at those 2 patients. Those 2 patients had information on there, but the rest of the patients did not have any information in there whatsoever. And, we started talking kind of brainstorming, what do you think that is? And one of the things that kind of, stood out to me was that, the population that they're working with can be transient. Not establishing care, they're just kind of seeking, I'm sick, let me go to the ED, that, they're not being established with a primary care. If they're not established, and if they're not in One Health Board, then that information is not going to be appear when they go on the patients. what they're doing to try to reduce, that is that they're actually came to an agreement, an MOU with Community Health Central Washington and Ellsworth, that the patients that they identified in merit as not having a PCP, they're making a referral to Community Health Central Washington, and they're establishing care with them there to kind of, reduce that barrier of the patients not having information in the One Health Board. But there's other organizations, that we have mentioned it to them, and they're like, oh, that sounds like a really good, piece of information they can get for the patients. But there are some, the more we talk about it and the more we have it out there, the more education we provide to providers. Hopefully we can see more of them using, implementing and looking at the data that's on there already.
You want to mention the milestones associated with that plan?
Sure. So one of the milestones that we're aiming for next year for the IT, can you hear me?
Yeah, put it right next to the
IT infrastructure is for cohort 1 in the second year. It will be mandatory for them to subscribe to that. It will be the 3-year subscription that we're implementing as a mandatory change, and for them to be able to implement that in the clinic to facilitate gaps in care along with manage and along with direct secure messaging if they don't have that. Okay. That's it.
Oh, sorry.
So in October, we invite, the second year that we invite the local health department members to come down to our leadership council meeting and report out on their activities during the year, current and future activities. I was very, very happy with the results. We had some excellent presentations from the leaders about what they're doing in their area. Also, we invited the third-party administrators, the organization, most of them foundations, that are administering the funds we made available to each region to address social determinants of health. These third-party administrators also invited, I think we have about 8 or 9 around there, grant recipients who describe the work they're already doing in their regions. And as an example, Dayton Hospital, they use our funds to buy 2 transport vans. One, the other one's in the works probably, and with a gurney and other amenities for the transport van, as well as let's see who else. Ross House. Rhonda spoke about Ross House and what they're doing. Also, the structured campus program in Richmond County, they use all their funds to train people throughout the county, all the school districts, for them to train families. The point of that program is to increase communication between parents and children 10 to 14 years old. Also, in Yakima, they're using some of the money to help with down payment for a habitat for the home. So there are a lot of wonderful things going around, especially around housing. We have completed this process now. All the money has been dispersed. All the areas have selected the grant recipients. We have about 32 organizations doing what work out there with the funds we provided. So it was a great meeting. I think it was very successful in itself and the work the Lions are doing out there. And our next, one of the deadlines that we went through a process of selecting a media company to manage the media part of our campaign to address adverse childhood experiences, resilience throughout our region. So we sent our feedback in September to 10 area media companies. 5 of them responded, and we interviewed 3 more. And while that process, we had the communications committee assist with the scoring, also the task force and GCACH staff. So the field group is the company we selected. They have close to 30 years experience. Also, they have extensive work with nonprofits and also with several in healthcare, as well as multiple campaigns that are in English and Spanish. And we'll bring up the contract later on.
Biological next, which is the second one. I think you scroll down a little bit, that one, they don't have the rest working. So we had a few organizations transition into exemplar this year, so last month in October. We had a recognition award there, and we just wanted to highlight that and make sure that the board was aware that we had organizations that are doing such great work. They've taken ownership of practice transformation, they're implementing it and scaling it out before we ask them to. So we wanted to highlight Catholic Charities, Providence, and also Poly Behavioral Health, and still recognize our existing exemplars because they've done great work for us. I know I work with Catholic Charities, CHCW, sorry. I work with CHCW, and they are always just open to answering any questions, reaching out, jumping on WebEx, and those who want to recognize them. Oh, yes, and Dr. Taylor, who did our presentation, our leadership council earlier today, he was recognized as our physician champion just because he, as you can tell, he was in the presentation before, he does an excellent job of championing the work, generating buy-in amongst other providers, just super overall pleasant to work with, and he's an amazing provider for the work. So, yeah.
So scroll back up. Yeah. So these are Community Health Central Washington, Yakima Neighborhood Health Services, and Yakima Valley Farm Workers Clinic. Were chosen as our 2019 Practice Transformation Exemplar Organization. For that, they received an award. And, you know, just like Jenna mentioned, we had questions on, you know, somebody, you know, how do you manage your roster? So we would, you know, reach out to somebody within those organizations. We were, you know, more than happy to have them come and visit or talk to them. I mean, they were just wonderful to work with, and they're still wonderful to work with. And, you know, going into next year and the third year, you know, we're more than likely going to have more emails coming from us, you know, asking you for some resources or, you know, some questions. So, I mean, you guys have done a great job, and that's why you guys were chosen as the Practice Transformation.
Great.
So, the payments that we made from the portal this month were really exciting. We have over 2 payments going out totaling over $2.3 million. Our year-to-date for 2019 is approaching $13 million. We still have more to go. We have one more quarter that will be paid out this year before quarter 1 and quarter 2 providers. So good job, you guys. Fun to give that money to you for our work we do. Go back to Ruben. The Ruben show.
Recognition awards. So on October 30th, we held the Provider Recognition Awards to recognize all the work that's being done out there to achieve practice transformation and the patient-centered medical home model care. We're not limited to the category you see there in the middle. We had a lot of fun. It was held at Walter Ford Winery, and I would like to take a moment here and recognize Southeast Washington Rural Health Network. They weren't able to attend, but
I'd like to make this award right now. They received the Rural National Award, and just for being great advocates for rural areas, sometimes they have to remind us that you know, even though we may consider ourselves, or people in Seattle may consider the Parkview and Yakima rural, you know, they're even more rural than that. And sometimes
Rural, yeah, I think rural.
Yes, and we need to take, really good at advocating for that region and reminding us that, you know, it's different over there, and sometimes what works in our area doesn't work over there. So that's why you're getting that award. Right.
The next column is on the community dashboard, and actually there have been many staff that have been working on this, especially the navigators and Wes, Sam and I, to put together a community dashboard that will be on the CSI portal. So when you open up the Healthy Communities portal to go into reporting, what we'd like to demonstrate is some specific measures, this is 12 of them, that would be available for viewing. This would not be a publicly facing website, and we still have some work to do with the practice transformation work group to ensure that the measures that we are selecting are the ones they would like to see aggregated, and then there will be an option for a drop-down menu to see specific organizational measures. So what we did in this article was just show you the top 12 measures that staff is considering with CSI, including there, but then circle back with the practice transformation work group to ensure that these are the right measures that tell the story about our progress. A lot of these are process measures, things that we have been implementing, such as risk stratification or entanglement, so that everybody can see the progress that's being made. Sam noted, though, that one of the unique features of our ACH is the fact that we've been so successful with bidirectional integration. And that shows very clearly on the graph and chart that some form or another, every primary care or behavioral health organization has selected some form of integration. So we're very proud of them for that. Sam, did you want to add anything?
You're talking about the milestone.
Yeah.
So I think we probably all saw the Healthy Washington newsletter, electronic now that we're at the midpoint.
Yes.
Now, so will they be publishing our metrics for us to be able to show where we are in terms of employees and where they think we are?
So, Healthier Washington, by the way, that brand is going away. Healthcare Authority has told us that they're trying to eliminate that brand. I know, and I regret any confusion that comes out about that, even though we don't have control over it. But in any case, Healthcare Authority and the IR team puts together the Healthier Washington measurement dashboard, which many of us have already seen. And you can drill down in that dashboard to look at Medicaid demographics, statewide, at the ACH level, and at the county level. On the measurement page, there are some of the paper performance measures around antidepressant use, asthma medication, the diabetes measures, emergency department utilization, and others. Not all the measures are on that dashboard, but many of them are. There's always a lag in the data. It would be great to get something a month after the service has been rendered, but typically Healthier Washington, Healthcare Authority waits until there's what they would call claims completion, a certain percentage of claims that come in that tie into those measures, because all of them are derived from claims. So to look at, I would say probably the most up-to-date performance on many, but not all of the 50 performance measures, that tool is very useful.
But overall, when the state expects us to have a certain reduction in spend, and I guess my question, even if at a higher level, is do we know whether we're making our way toward that reduction? And is there a way for you to show us what that looks like?
On spending, I don't think that there's any tool that I know that developed that talks about cost to address your specific question, Rhonda. There is another tool that was put together through King County, Seattle Public Health. We have a contract with them as some of the other ACH to one with what's called the APPD, All Payers Claims Database, which includes Medicaid, some Medicare, and commercial claims that are not self-funded or self-insured, which are smaller organizations. And from that, they derived a Tableau dashboard, which again is based on claims to show performance relative to our targets. And we can see how we're performing. It's actually a really cool tool. At some point, we can bring it here and discuss it with this group. Internally, we've had a meeting where I've reviewed some external data sources that can help the GCACH staff derive data to support some of our practice transformation organizations. There's a couple tools there that I think in the future, I want to put Patrick on this to share with the group to show what we're just talking about. Does that help?
Well,
okay.
I mean, I guess it just feels like at this point in the game, it would be helpful. It seems that the state will be wanting us to know how they think we're doing.
Right.
So that's my question: is there a way for us to get some feedback on how we're doing?
So originally, they put out what they call the baseline, which was 2017 year data. And since that baseline was released, and we put together a number needed to treat, which I think I would bring before the board to show where we're at versus where our target is. The state of Washington has rebased those numbers to take into consideration things like third-party liability, like in a car accident. There's an additional party helping with covering care or coverage of care. They rebased the numbers, which should be turned down to us this month, where we can at least look at the baseline. But in terms of performance, and I know this is a big lag because we're about to finish 2019 and we're still talking about 2017 data. Again, that tool that I mentioned from King County actually does look at targets versus actual performance at a later date. So there is some information there to show our performance, if that helps.
Yeah, if it's worth looking at, maybe we can look at it next month.
I think it is. I agree with you.
Thank you.
So Diane, if Diane is on the line.
Yeah, I can go ahead and get that date. So for the upcoming behavioral health provider monthly meeting, we had our first one last month, and I think that it went very, very well, well received and well attended. I have the meeting minutes almost ready to go out, so as soon as I get back into the office next week, I'll hopefully get those out. And then the next one will be we're not having one in December, but we will be having a result from these provider meetings are issues that are being brought up with integration. And in fact, we just received an email from Healthcare Authority saying that there is some issues with integrated managed care right now. So we will continue to address some of the residential issues that are happening. And so we will have another residential meeting with the MCOs and the Healthcare Authority and the residential providers. And that will be a separate meeting. But we will continue to have the monthly provider meetings start in January. As of January 8th will be the next one. And as for the learning collaboratives, we only have a few more coming up that we have scheduled. Sam and I have a meeting scheduled to continue to finish the rest of the year out for next year. We have Adam Falcone, who will be here on December 11th. And we're hoping that this will be a well-attended. We have 85 people registered at this time for it. So we're hoping that the people that have registered will show up and be ready to learn from him.
Thanks, Diane. Chelsea, I think you're the last one.
Oh, yay! So we had our open house last month. We moved in our new office, and it was a very exciting engagement. We had providers come out. We had some friends, family, neighbors. The whole goal was just kind of welcome everyone to our new office, show our new gigs. And we had some fun games. There was large Jenga, there was pin the mustache on mud, and some golf. So it was really fun to kind of show off our new office.
Anybody have any questions?
I have a general question. It sounds like all the practice transformations are going pretty well. Is there any group, and I don't want you to name any names, but is there any resistance? I mean, it seems like everyone's on board, right? Remember when we first started this task, we're like, oh, they're going to have to change their whole paradigm. Has there been any resistance?
Are you talking about as far as practice transformation in general? No, actually, it started out that we did have some resistance, and our biggest non-supporters, I should say, have been our biggest supporters, and they've actually evolved to coordinate and really collaborate with other organizations, and it really has become a true family. So no, I haven't seen anything, have you?
No, there's challenges, that come up. But as far as pushback, not really. I agree with Sam. At first, I think it was just not knowing what the work that had to go into it. Because, it was new for us, it's new for them. How are we going to get this done? I think that was kind of the main point that, we don't know what we're doing. How are we going to do it? And now going into, we're in the fourth quarter, now they're like, oh, okay, they're able to, implement, transition into new workflows, things that they weren't doing in the past, they're, have them now, like decision aids, that was a big piece. A lot of people didn't know what they were. Self-management was another big piece. If there's some transitions within the organization, then there is that challenge of that person's coming in, halfway through the project. What do they know? So you have to catch them up all the way, and then they still have to kind of keep learning as to who we are, what we do, and what they have to do within the organization on top of the other work that they have to do. So things like that do come up. Yeah.
And let's say a lot of it has to do with Jenna, Martin, and Sam. I gotta tell you that, I'm sure.
I think that another strategy that we use was the design of the practice transformation work group. And that it's primarily providers, clinical people on that group, and they are the disciples for practice transformation, so that if we do get into any issues, we can always go to the providers that are part of what they do is to help us design the program. So as they're helping us design the program and the milestones and reviewing all of the information, they have opportunity feedback. But since they have been involved, we know that we have a disciple that can help us open doors if we get into any issues, and so that's been very helpful. Yeah, I think that's awesome. And besides, our great navigators are great disciples.
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions? Okay. Then how about going on to the financials, Brian and Becky?
Great. Hey, Becky. You guys have a talkie thing? Do you need one of these?
Go for it, Brian.
Okay, thank you. So the Finance Committee met on November 18th. I actually wrote notes this time.
Wow.
And I remembered it. And I found them. We've actually been very busy this month. Discussed just a number of things. We discussed the monthly revenues and expenses, the details, kind of got into the details related to some of the legal fees for some contract development work that Becky and her team are doing. Office technology increases due to the replacement of some laptops for a couple of staff members. We had some increased office supply expenses related to bringing in the new, moving into the new digs. Travel expenses associated with reimbursement for staff who attended a Seattle conference. Otherwise, the monthly stuff looked pretty routine. The group was fine. There were no significant questions, no discussions. Becky and her team always do a great job putting that stuff together. You had some comments or things that you were working with Moss Adams, right? And so a couple of discrepancies y'all was working through. Have those worked their way through yet?
We've been talking about that. So there, on the financials, there are two questions that came up from the finance committee. They have talked to Moss Adams about both of them. And one of them turned into a journal entry, and then the other one was about some assets that were rolled over from 2018.
Thank you, Wendy. You said financials. Were these related to the financials or to the audit?
The financials.
They're related.
Very much.
Yeah. From the statement activity.
Thank you. So the Finance Committee was ready to recommend approval to the board. I would make that a motion to go ahead and approve the October financial statements.
I'll second.
Second from Jorge. Any discussion? Then, if none, then all in favor?
Aye.
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 You all.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. There was also one other meeting we had in on 11/14. We met in person at Sunnyside to discuss the investment strategy, investment policy. My notes on that was that the proposed that we posed that we would advance or find an investment manager to work through investing activities with the funds. We're going to put some limits on those into two investment-grade vehicles, which would include bonds, T-bills, instruments like that. The focus there was very low risk, tolerant, for principal risk. So, we have some excellent, frankly, since we've added really to the committee, we have some excellent direction. I'm Julie on that. Are there any other comments you make for that?
No.
Okay, thank you. And there's a policy, correct?
They get to the packet.
And so we would make a recommendation to go ahead and approve that the one, we approve the investment policy, and two, have staff identify an investment manager and bring it back to the finance committee. And I think that's it.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second from Jorge. Is there any further discussion on the investment policy that's in the packet? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for your work on this.
Thank you very much. Nice job, Becky.
Okay, so I think now we go on to the next policy that we're going to look at. Looks like we've got three of them. First is the behavioral health internship. Carol and Dan.
So, Dan, are you on the phone still?
Yes,
I am still on the phone.
yes, I am.
Dan, would you like to talk about, did you have
Sure, we dropped this workforce, what did we call it? Behavioral health scholarship.
So, Diane, I was going to ask Dan if he could report out kind of. Thanks.
There's two of us on here.
Sorry.
So, and I'm sorry, when I talk, there's an incredible echo, so I'm not sure what to do about that. But, so first of all, I have to really acknowledge both the Workforce Committee and Carol in their work for staying with this and kind of the intentionality of kind of listening and paying attention to multiple contributors to this policy So essentially, this policy incentivizes behavioral health organizations to create clinical experiences for a wide variety of students who may fit and work in or potentially work in their organizations. I'm assuming that you have the policy in front of you. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So what we're really hoping to accomplish with this is to, again, activate organizational ownership and partnership in health workforce development, particularly around behavioral health careers. This is a very innovative concept. It's actually being looked at and paid attention to at the state level. In fact, this morning in the legislative committee. And so we're kind of cutting edge in terms of recommending this as a strategy for increasing behavioral health careers. What we're hoping for is to ask the board to approve this policy and to basically have Greater Columbia Accountable Community Health staff begin to implement the strategy by engaging organizations across the region, both partners in our projects as well as maybe even non-partners, to begin application to develop those internships. And I'm using a wide variety of terms. It's interesting, and Carol can attest, that when we began to think about and look at developing this policy, one of the challenges is the jargon and the language that people use to even describe what an internship is, or an externship, or a preceptorship. Or, you know, that as you can imagine was it's been an interesting journey to kind of hear about the variety of pathways that people engage in to obtain and gain clinical experience so they can practice. Carol, how detailed would you like to proceed in terms of actually getting into the specifics of this policy?
So, Dan, this is Rhonda. So I watched some of the emails go back and forth, and people have the policy in front of them. One of the emails from the group talked about the section of the policy that's in red. And maybe you can talk a little bit about about why this is here, and why it's in red, and why the committee felt the need to define behavioral health. Was that a sticking point in the group?
Well, we reached out to a number of individuals. Oh, Carol, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the people on our workforce committee has a strong background in psychology, and the definition that we were using from Insight he objected to. So we put in 3 different definitions of behavioral health, and I think that that's something that the committee can wrestle with, but they're all, you know, one's a definition from SAMHSA that he preferred, so included one from AHRQ, and then the first definition was from Insight, Telepsych. So I think it's just his preference was that we use the SAMHSA definition and not the other 2 definitions.
So is the goal, and again, not being part of most of the discussions, just watching the email, the goal is to increase the workforce for what level? Because behavioral health staff can be case managers, they could be therapists. So what was the work group trying to get to in terms of a goal? I guess that's our question.
So I'm gonna rewind a little bit and direct the board to the targeted workforce state document. So when we were working with the workforce committee and last week on this committee, Sandra, we really needed to understand what the gaps in our workforce were. And so we did a study based on what the workforce had asked us to do to look at the gaps that we have in the workforce. And we knew already that we had huge gaps in behavioral health, but this was actually an examination of the programs within Greater Columbia ACH or program areas and our workforce shortages. So what it really did is it pointed out that we have a huge need for behavioral health providers at all levels. So the policy was really designed then to try to fill the gaps in behavioral health, especially since the funding was taken out of the Phase 2 Integrated Managed Care Fund. Because we felt like by taking the funding out of that pot of money, we really needed to honor the fact that we needed more behavioral health professions. So this really runs the gamut, Rhonda, from community health workers all the way up to Psych D needs. And the way that it's organized is that we started out by listing specific professions and then realized we were going down a rabbit hole. It would have taken 2 or 3 pages just to list the certifications and the licensures. So we kept it very broad. And then it really is geared to address more rural health needs because that's the greatest gap and the least amount of resources. So that was another point in the targeted workforce state is that rural health typically has more acute shortages of behavioral health and behavioral health providers. So we really tried to address that need. So it really tries to run the gamut so that if you were a provider and you wanted to expand your care team to add a community health worker, there would be some provision of training. We also kind of oriented it to be either in a professional practice or team-based care. So as we go along, and we suspect that this will be a learning process as we look at the applications and as they come in on sponsorship policy, we figure that we'll be making mid-course corrections as we go through the program. But this is in front of the behavioral health providers last week at their meeting, and we did get one comment back from Jamie at Somerset, and we added her comment in here about using the Department of Health as its certification process for some behavioral health positions, so we added that. But otherwise, I think behavioral health providers are pretty happy with it, and I will let Les and Sandra speak to the policy test.
One of the things that Carol didn't touch on that we also looked at is that we wanted to make this policy accessible to all organizations. So whether you're already an organization comfortable with the preceptor process and you have that structure in place at your organization, this would be a nice fit to help you hopefully take on additional residents, students, community health workers, et cetera. But if you didn't, that there would be a lower entry point too, so that you could actually start that process and get those policies in place and have very low barriers, because again, the whole issue is we want to be able to expand the workforce, and then it's just broad enough so that way we have a nice variety of options for what positions we can support and add to. So we know we can't have necessarily with this policy do just community health workers or just psychiatrists, psychiatry residents, but just to have that flexibility to be able to get a full spectrum and hit. It's not going to cover everything, but it's going to close some of the gaps across the board. So.
The last, the piece that I wanted to point out is that the funding would go to the organization that is taking in the intern, extern, preceptee, whatever it's called. So it's not, I wouldn't be applying if I wanted to have a preceptorship to this organization, but I would go to where I wanted my preceptorship, and they could apply for funding to support the extra workload it would be to have me. We are not paying for that extra workload. We are helping to support that, showing that it's important for our community.
Do folks have other questions or comments about the policy?
I also just wanted to comment that, as Dan said, it has gotten quite a bit of attention at the state level. So on the target workforce state, you'll see who it has been through. So we, when we talked to Shane McGuire about this policy, he recommended that we talk to Wayne Toller, who used to teach at Waldorf University. We also got recommendations to talk to Dr. Laura Kaplan from the University of Washington and Dr. Mason from the University of Washington, who run very good programs, and then Ann Hirsch, who is the Dean for Academic Affairs at WSU. So, I'm sorry, she's at the University of Washington. So, and then we got the attention of the healthcare authority, so Suzanne Wagner has weighed in on this policy, and Sue Skillman, who is the Deputy Director of the University of Washington Center for Health Workforce Study, also made some really great comments, especially as it related to rural health. So we feel like that this policy has been seen by a lot of different people that are in professions that can add a lot of value to what the policy does. So, you know, I think it's ready for prime time. We also have a accompanying application that's in the packet for the board that the workforce committee hasn't seen, but they will at their next meeting. But we've just heard a lot of great enthusiasm around this type of a policy to increase the behavioral health workforce, and especially in rural areas.
I would just like to add, this is probably the most thoroughly reviewed and vetted process program. I've had a little piece in this, that this ACH has done since its inception. Carol has been exceptionally thorough in bringing in a lot of partners to go through the review process. I think this will eventually become a standard that other ACHs can adopt as well.
Does anyone else have comments or questions? Dan, do you have any additional comments?
The only comment, and it's kind of a little bit takeoff from what Sandra was saying, was this is really an opportunity for organizations to reflect on what is their specific needs and where do they want to target this work. And we're anxious as a workforce committee and as a board to hear what those needs are through that application process.
Are you wanting to make a motion on this policy today?
Yes, I would like to make a motion that the ACH board approve this policy as presented.
I'll second.
And a second by Sandra. Is there any further discussion?
Can I clarify?
Yes.
Carol, you did say we're using the SAMHSA definition, so the other ones would be removed?
Well, I would like to input on that. You behavioral health professionals, I don't think we need all three definitions.
I think SAMHSA is the most commonly referred to.
Okay. Yeah.
So is that a friendly amendment to Dan's motion?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That works.
And you're okay with that second?
Yep.
Any further discussion?
I just want to be clear on the requirements for interns, that this is also including the credentialing of certified peer counselors and maybe CHs. Yes.
Okay. Any further clarifications or discussion? Not? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Does anyone oppose?
Here's some enthusiasm, guys. Over again, you want the ayes over again?
Let me just say, this appears this policy is approved. Now you can be
Yay! Yay!
Great work, Dan.
Good job.
I think you can take a nap now, Dan.
Thanks.
Okay, so the LIN training policy. Ruben.
Okay, so last month, the board meeting, I brought to you the LIN training policy. I brought to you some updates. So we had a good discussion on it, and we suggested for me to incorporate some changes. I did do that. I sent out the changes to all the LIN leaders. I only got one response. Rhonda saying it was good. So this policy does contain your suggestions from the last board meeting. A couple of weeks ago in the staff meeting, there was a suggestion to change the language to ensure that every application goes through some type of LIN approval process. The way it read before, a person would bring up a request to the LIN leaders, and then the LIN leaders would sign it away. So we added some language so that there's a process within the LIN, and I'll read it to you. And I sent it back out And the only person that responded was Martha, so I incorporated some of her suggestions here to make sure, because she was right. The way you read before, a person would have to wait until the next LIN meeting, and we have at least one meeting quarterly. So we changed the wording on page 3. You will see the change in that category, the application process. So I'll read it to you. A LIN training request form must be completed and brought up for a motion and a vote at a LIN membership meeting, which should later be reflected in the meeting minutes. The request can also be approved by a LIN board or a committee if in place. If approved in one of these 3 manners, it must be signed by a LIN leader and forwarded to critical GCACH. So this is the only new and different thing you're seeing from our last conversation in October. So if this seems appropriate to you, I would ask for a motion and approval.
So moved.
Brian. Okay, well, are there any, so.
It was me.
Okay. Is there any discussion about the updated policy? Okay, if not, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Training policy is approved. Thank you. And then the changes to the financial policy.
So, at the finance committee meeting, we discussed, at the finance committee meeting, we discussed that, we have identified a need to add an additional credit card, because you guys know we have 2 credit cards right now, and we'd like to get a 3rd one. And the reason for that is, our marketing manager, Laura, who's not here, she has been doing a lot of, marketing for us. It's been required for her to make some purchases. And so, what this policy is to add, change the language under the financial policy that talks about the authorization and purchasing limit. That currently just talks about the, myself and Carol having purchasing authority, and what I'm asking to add is the marketing manager also have authority to purchase up to $300 for her marketing supplies with approval. 300. Okay. With approval from the director of finance and contracts, which doesn't change the policy much. It really just adds more to have some ability to make purchases. So the recommendation is that the board approve the changes to the financial policy and procedures manual and allow the marketing manager to carry one of our numeric credit card.
Also, Harold.
And also Ryan.
Yeah, we spoke to this in the finance committee, and we unanimously agreed that that was appropriate. So we would make a recommendation to the board as well, advancing credit card for Laura, for the marketing director, $300 discretion.
There's a motion from Brian. Is there a second? Second from Jorge. And is there discussion? And there's Sandra has one.
Yeah, I have just a question on this $300 level. Why 300 instead of 500? Because it just seemed like an extra level that we necessarily didn't need.
Right. I was looking at, sometimes when you're needing to purchase something, maybe the limit on it is 50 to 1,000, because regardless of, there might be some other stuff that needs to be done, and she's only got a purchasing power of 300. If there's, I was thinking people could hear me, I guess not. But I was just thinking of, if you're going to come back and it's not enough at the end of next year, or, why don't we just give her that ability to make that money?
Right. That's a fair question. We actually discussed this too. Our thought was the discretionary is 300 per transaction. So she might spend whatever it is. But you know, that's why we have an exec director, who's going to move it higher than 300. I think we decided that it probably made sense to start at this number, and if it needs to be voted, we can adjust it.
Yeah, I think that if we just approve for.
Because what do we have now, we've got?
Carol and I can do, we each have $5,000.
You guys have 5,000 people. Again, and I'll tell you that secret when we're in the discussions, that we're good, right? How many dollars do we have? If we
That was
want
the request.
500, I'm fine with that too.
Right, also noting that that was the request from the team, was she did an analysis and she thought $300 would be good.
Exactly. Lauren fed back into this process. It wasn't unilateral.
Yeah.
Except for her, she provided this input to what she thought was reasonable.
My comment was really just more on the administration, because at the $500 level, you already have to have the review by the Director of Finance and Contracts. So now you're creating another level of review that I didn't see missed it. That was my only why. It just seems, it'd be a cleaner process to keep it at the 500.
Okay, well, I can certainly amend my proposal, or my motion, to $500.
So as executive director, I just say I'd feel more comfortable with a $300 limit. I mean, as it is now, it's very cumbersome for Lauren because she comes to me for $100 or $200, but there's just not that many purchases. So if we need to come back, we can come back. But this is what staff is recommending, and that the finance team approves. So if we can keep it in that, we would appreciate that.
Amend?
Yes, I'll be happy to amend my. So what do we call this thing? The motion, right?
The box.
It's in the little box here. The executive director and the director of finance and contracts recommends the board approve recommended changes made to the accounting and finance policy, procedures manual, as well as allowing the marketing manager to obtain any preset card, $5,000 balance.
That's just 5,000.
It's the limit of the card.
The limit of the card.
Yeah, it's a $300 transaction limit.
Per transaction.
As approved by the finance.
Okay, and Jorge, a second? All right, is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Okay, so then we are going to the contract. We've already done the investment policy. So Carol, thank you.
Thank you, Jorge.
So this would be amendment form number 1 that we're looking at?
Okay, so for the business amendment is for the cohort 1. That's right. Okay. So this would be an amendment to the contract for the cohort 1 providers, and this money was based off of the scale and sustain money from the fund flow model that we all saw a few months ago. So we, Sam and her team and got together and well, a lot of us, Carol and the rest of us as well, and we laid out this revenue sharing model. Looks the same. You guys recognize this. It looks the same for us, the contract. All we did was we, well, actually, we did a lot. And Jenna went through this in great detail at the finance committee meeting, which is where we first showed this to the group. Which, thank you. I think she did a really great job. And explained all these milestones. And so what's on the table today is just to approve this amendment for the cohort 1 contract. So this revenue sharing model would replace the one that's in their current contract. And so this is what their payment structure would look like for 2020. Carol, did you want to?
So I think what kind of budget and funds flow, right?
Yeah, sorry. So it's the budget and funds flow committee that approves the financial allocations and the incentive program.
For the winter, right.
We did make, though, a slight change to the, actually a slight change. The added station 6A1 are worth $4,000. So this would be the added station that the providers using the collective medical direct secure messaging and One Health Port, at least looking at that information. And then under care coordination, all of those activities are actually mandatory for cohort 1, year 2, that there is a large reward for making sure that you're following up within 1 week of ED discharge or hospital discharge, inpatient discharge, and then signing care compact agreements. So the $149,454 is the total amount that a provider could or an organization could achieve for year 2 under practice transformation. And this is consistent with the modeling that we showed the board during the retreat for the scale and sustain.
I have a question. On 6A1, are those all ands or are they ors? They're collective medical and DSM and One Health Port?
Yes.
And for, again, my question on One Health Port, is that sending and receiving, or is that just one of them?
It's looking. It's making sure that you're checking into One Health Port to look at the patient profile. I don't think it's sending or receiving right now.
We can look at, I think there's a variety of ways we can look at that, because I know those that are looking at reviews and already attesting and doing a lot of other transport of information. If you can show that you have another way that you're looking at identification of gaps in care, direct messaging is a little bit different because we want to make sure that you have a way to communicate with your community. Non-healthcare organizations like the YMCA and those sorts of things, as well as your EMS services. But for One Health Port in general, yes, it's really going to be beneficial more for behavioral health organizations that don't have any kind of infrastructure in place to be able to identify those gaps in care. We're already hearing from our organizations that have adopted that infrastructure, that they're already seeing that patients not only do not have the PCPs, but they are also looking at that they're not really adhering to their treatment, that they're going to ERs, and that they're actually getting medications that they should be on. So it really is looking at the entity and how they're utilizing. Did I answer your question, Rhonda?
I'll talk to you afterwards. I'm obviously very confused about One Health Port. Questions about amendment number 1 for cohort 1? Okay, is there a motion to approve this amendment?
I motion to approve this amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Who is it?
Eric.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Okay, thank you very much. So the community resilience campaign.
Okay, that would be me and possibly Becky, too, right? Got a microphone over there? Okay.
I do.
So this is the contract with the field group, the ad agency that we contracted to conduct the community resiliency campaign, the media part of it. It's a $90,000 contract for the pilot that we're conducting in Yakima between January and March. And as you can see there in section 3, it's our scope pretty much. And you can see the deliverables there, the timeline. They are spending $23,220 on the production on the creative part. The rest of the money, $66,000 plus, is going to media placement. And Becky, do you have anything else to add?
No, I don't. This field group provided this contract, and I worked with their lawyer and made a couple changes, added some indemnification language that was in our contract with the standard that was written by our lawyers to kind of protect ourselves. And other than that, I mean,
more and work on the scope.
Just as clarification, the board actually approved us contracting with a company that we're bringing back that specific vendor at this point.
This is not an action item then.
Just as a refresher for board members that who weren't here previously, you put it out for bid, and I think we went through this already, but, and then there were members of the communications committee that helped score the process, and then there was an interview process that involved both staff and some board members and task force members. So it's been pretty well vetted, and you had a budget set out for it.
Yeah.
So is there any other questions or comments about that? Do you need a motion on this, or just for less than it?
I don't, this is a report, isn't it?
Yeah.
We already
We're
approved it.
reporting it back.
Yeah, we're reporting back who the vendor was that was selected.
Thank you.
Okay, so cohort 3.
Okay, so Sam and I guess we'll tag team on this SBAR. So in September, staff brought some recommendations for cohort 3. The board approved the following clinics for cohort 3, which was Ideal Option, Guardian Village, Chaplain Police Health Care, and Trio. And because we had such a low turnout response to the LOI CSA, we asked the board to give us some more time to reach out to other organizations to see if they would be interested in practice transformation, which we did. We reached out to Cougar Health Services, Youth Medical and Counseling Clinic from Central Washington University, Movement Hospital and Medical Center. We reached out to Tri-State, Walla Walla Clinic, Prestige, Post-Acute Rehab, Richland Rehab, and from those groups, we had some successful applicants for practice transformation, and Sam has included the scoring sheet and the results of the scoring that she did. Could you show us the
Yeah.
Yes. The selection criteria for participating providers. Smaller.
Really? You want to go to the packet too?
Oh, she's probably And so with Sam's scoring, you can see how it fell. That Walla Walla Clinic scored very high in the selection criteria that included volume, leadership, transparency, collaboration, adaptive, value-driven, and equity, which is the way that we score all of the organizations that are interested in doing practice transformation with Greater Columbia. So you can see how the scores fell out. And we are now coming back to the board to recommend some additional organizations for practice transformation. And then, so that would be Prestige, Post-Acute Rehab, Richland Rehab, Tri-State Hospital, and the Walla Walla Clinic. But in order to fill out the whole complement, because we know that we can have at least 20 provider organizations included in cohort 3, according to the modeling, the financial modeling that Dan needed. We wanted to maximize the breadth and the scale of practice transformation efforts. So we are recommending that we add one more site to the following organizations. The Yakima Valley Farm Workers Clinic, Cadillac, Community Health of Central Washington Board, Yakima Neighborhood Health Services, Estrella Sunnyside, and Estrella Toppenish. And the reason that we're adding a couple of sites for the Estrella group is that they originally did not get the full complement of organizations that the other hospitals did. And then we also knew that we had geographic disparities in Yakima, especially Benton County, and then Walla Walla is a really nice addition because they have a large Medicaid population, the rural clinic. So it's taken some work to get these organizations, these sites, into the fold. I'd like to thank Martha Landman for reaching out to Tri-State, who is fairly resistant to practice transformation until they had a personal connection. And now I think that they're on board because you really needed somebody from Clarkson. But that would be our recommendation, that we add these organizations and these sites to cohort 3. Sam, did you want to add anything?
The only thing I wanted to add is the additional sites that we had opening without the scoring was also based upon the volume of Medicaid clients.
I'm here, right, so what?
The volume of Medicaid clients as well as geographical areas.
Questions or comments?
And then maybe the other addition is that as the directors are going around visiting with all of these different organizations this year, we did hear quite a bit of commentary about the fact that some of our larger FQs had large Medicaid populations, and there was a little bit of disparity in terms of the number of clients that they served compared to some of the other sites. And so we thought that it was a fair and equitable thing to be able to add some of these additional sites to FQs and organizations that were also exemplar. So, Sandra, do you want to respond to that or not?
Thank you. I don't know. I know. I think it's I do think it's great. I think if we have the means to fill, and we do have providers, not just FQHCs that are seeing a large Medicaid volume, I think we owe it to bring those numbers into our group and to see how our practice transformation model helps drive better quality outcomes and cost savings. As soon as we figure out how to find those cost savings.
Other questions, comments? If not, is anyone prepared to make a motion?
We have 2 facilities on there, so I probably shouldn't make a motion.
Yeah,
Anyone who's not named on there prepared to make a motion?
So the motion would be to approve the cohort 3 practice transformation organization?
Yes.
There. Yes.
Okay, motion by Les,
Second.
second by Eric. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Is anyone opposed? Motion passes.
You call for abstentions?
Are there any abstentions?
Yes.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Operations budget? Oh, no, practice transformation toolkit.
All right, so this document, this is the large holdout. We presented this to the practice transformation work group a week ago and had a very robust session on all of the items there. And so what we wanted to do this board was to bring you guys the ones that we got that robust discussion on, that feedback, and just kind of present those to you. So what I'll do is walk through this document, and for the ones in the third or fourth column that say no change, I will go over them. Because just on directly to WCACH, but I will kind of elaborate on the discussion and the feedback on the ones that don't say no change. Okay. So I'm going to start on the second one where it says milestone 2A1B, MCO patient roster. So we thought it would be a great idea to add this question based off of the discussion that we had in the PTW. So we had a lot of talk around empanelment, and that's wonderful and great to impanel your patients internally. However, there is a need to look at what you have as an organization versus what the MCOs think you have. And so we added a question: please attest that your organization has reviewed your panel patients against the rosters of the MCOs on a monthly basis. And what we're going to ask of our sites is just to provide those numbers. So if they are running on Epic, they would just let us know how many Molina patients Epic thinks they have versus how many Molina patients Molina thinks they have. And we actually had a conversation this week with one of our sites, and they provided that exact example, and they used One Health Board to do that. So, and I'll just kind of pause at the end of these for like thoughts, feedback, support. Okay. So now I'm going to jump down.
Shannon, I noticed you're saying the things about no change, but you have a bunch of them that say mandatory in 2020, then no change. Does that mean that you chose not to make it mandatory in 2020?
No, that means that it still will be mandatory in 2020, but the PTW didn't have any feedback or pushback. They agreed that it should still be mandatory in 2020.
Okay. So what's in red are the changes, or the things that you've added. And what's on the third column is the things, the discussion of the group about what they really wanted or not.
Yes, so that's a good point. I'll walk through that.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I just wanted, you were going to go to only some of them, and I saw a lot of red and was curious.
This is why I'm important, you asked me the question. So the first column is just a milestone and kind of the question, so that's the left-hand column in blue. The second column, 2019, that's how it reads in the workbook as of now. The third column is what we proposed as a PTW a couple weeks ago. The fourth column, final change post-PTW meeting, this is kind of where we've landed after we've taken that feedback back and gone through it and where we think that we should move forward. And then the last column, explanation, is just a little extra detail that we thought the board would appreciate on why that was brought up and why we landed there, any links that we might need to kind of back our work, anything like that. Does that make a little more sense? Okay, so since there was no questions on the MCO patient rosters, I'm going to jump down to milestone 2A3. It says modified in front of it, opportunities for those at highest risk. So Chelsea's going to scroll. She is back to the seat. So I'm at milestone 2A3 right there. So this one, we thought it would be great to add a team huddle as a mandatory choice here. So our sites in year 2 would have to conduct a team huddle. The discussion that we had at the PTW is, what is a team huddle? How long is a team huddle? How frequently do they team huddle? And so we relied on the Safety Net Medical Home's definition of team huddle, which is in the explanation column. So it was in italics, and it says short mandatory team huddles occurring daily or several times per day are often used to review schedules, make staffing adjustments to accommodate demands, identify patient needs, and plan care activities in advance. Huddles allow protected time for task delegation and on-the-ground problem solving. So that is where we landed with what a huddle is and how often it should be conducted.
That's good.
There was an outcome, right, under final change, that they have to do a data huddle.
Correct, they will have to do a data huddle. All right, the next one I'm going to jump down to. The next one I'm going to jump down to is milestone 2B1, question 13. So originally we asked currently how they are identifying patients that are lost to follow up. And so our first idea was that we want to know data. So how many of those patients are actually being contacted after they get lost to follow up? So naturally the question in the PTW meeting was, what does lost to follow up mean? And so we established that that would be one no-show, and follow-up could be completed via phone call, but we also got feedback in the PTW to just call the patient once and then give up on them. And so we landed that there should be 3 attempts to contact the patient. Any feedback on that? Yes.
For one no-show? Yeah, it actually feels like a
Yeah.
lot.
Okay, and so we did get, I got some feedback. I kind of, Laura took this and ran with it, so we've been going over this in our meetings twice this week.
And
so,
primary care clinic,
yeah.
we've sent letters to people, but we don't send 3 letters.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that was one of the feedback that I wanted to run by Stan today, is that will a letter suffice for that contact? And we're getting out, so.
But one.
One, I mean, you're still wanting to set the bar at 3, that's.
So I guess a letter would be different than a phone call.
Right.
Depends on what kind of follow-up we're talking about. If we're just saying, hey, you missed your appointment, we need to see you, how can we rearrange your appointment, get it next time, versus, this is really serious, you know.
Well, I was just saying, it makes a difference whether it's a follow-up or if they've got an abnormal lab and then we'll send somebody out to the house. But this is very generic, and it would send free contact for follow-up.
After one no-show. I mean, we have people with multiple no-shows that we're dealing with that need that level of care, not one.
So it sounds like we'll be adding just more detailed language on the letter versus phone call, and then frequency of letter and phone call.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm moving to 2B1, question 16. So this one, we had a bunch of discussion on. So originally, our question as it stands right now in the workbook is how have you increased your practice capacity to implement the program in the last quarter? When it says this program is referring to bidirectional integration. And so this one, we had the option, we thought it would be great to have mandatory MAT training or a MAT referral source, or refer to the opioid resource network. So we thought that was kind of a layup, so to speak, for our ORNs that we also help facilitate. And so this one, we just got a question on, was it an either or option? So I actually misspoke, this wasn't the one we had a bunch of discussion on. But we just got, is it either or, and yes it is. So you can either do internally MAT trained, so have your providers be MAT trained, or have a MAT referral source, so if it's ideal option, you start and link whoever that might be, or you can just refer to the open resource network. But those are mandatory, those three things is a mandatory selection.
Acronym.
Medication-assisted treatment.
What?
Medication-assisted treatment.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That one does feel kind of like a no-brainer.
So I think for Yakima, when we are not contracting with the Opioid Resource Network, Comprehensive has a statewide grant tied to that. So in Yakima, where we're not contracting for an Opioid Resource Network or an ORN, Comprehensive Healthcare has a statewide resource grant for putting together an ORN. And I think that would qualify as a referral to an ORN. It doesn't have to necessarily be a GCACH ORN, just for point of clarification.
Okay, any more discussion on that? All right. So the next one is 2B2, question 5. Originally, right now, we asked, how are you assisting patients in getting self-management support? So what our original thought that we presented to the PTW was we wanted them to have mandatory use of the patient activation measure, the PAM, if the organization is interested in becoming a health home. We got a good discussion on that. And so we scaled that way back and just added a selection for referral to a health home for high-risk patients. So we just added that as an option. We got a lot of feedback that the PAM is already mandatory if you are a health home, so it seemed a little redundant. So we thought that was a safe place to land.
My only comment there is it's very difficult to make a referral to a health home because the Medicaid, the state deems patients health home eligible. And we have the ability to screen them, but if the state doesn't deem them health home eligible, it's very hard to qualify them for health home. So
don't pursue
and so that one isn't mandatory, so it's not saying they have to, it's just we're giving it as a selection.
Carol, can you add some dialogue on that for state?
Yeah, so the healthcare authority, the managed care organizations, and all the ACHs have been coming together over the past 3 months to discuss care coordination. And the healthcare authority is very much encouraging all of the ACHs to establish more, either help encourage more health homes or somehow increase the pipeline into the health home. So this is really in response to the healthcare authority seeing that the health homes have been a really effective program in terms of cost savings for the state. but understanding that there's a lot of dual eligible, that really need to be referred into health homes. So I would imagine that this is something that we can take, to the healthcare authority to say how, how do we increase the pipeline? And Jorge, maybe you have an answer for that, that again, a good faith attempt on Greater Columbia ACH's part to respond to the healthcare authority's request that we encourage more enrollment into.
Thank you, Chair. So managed care organizations have been part of the Health Homes program for years now, so we really understand the program very well. And it was one of the issues we had in the beginning with the implementation of the Pathways Hub and the recommendation to implement it. Because it was not easy for us to see the difference and the lack of. We have some regions in the state where we have had some implementation of the Pathways Hub. We have 30% more overlap with people on the Health Homes program already. So we support this new change of the healthcare authority towards moving this. Now, having said that, there's a number of members that are eligible for health homes, a number that are engaged, and we all know, whoever works in this program, that it's very hard to grow the number of eligible, of engaged into the number of eligible. So it's hard to find the members. I think this would help us at least be on the same page. Having said that, to the topic of redundancy, you're saying selection for referral to health homes for high-risk members. You cannot really refer a low-risk member because by definition, health homes is for high-risk members. So I'll just clarify because you need to have a risk score of 1.5 or higher to even qualify for the program. So if this program is all about the higher risk, and then still we're the risk of missing the ones who are not quite there, that they're still costing us a lot of support.
Maybe it's the language.
I think so.
Because, my understanding, and the last time I saw any numbers, Jorge, is that, of the people that the state has deemed health home eligible, we're only serving about 30% or 35%.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
So, but the state knows who those people are. Providers don't really know who those people are until the state refers them to the plans or aging and long-term care.
Yes.
So it's really not feasible for agencies to refer for health homes because the state knows who has plans, know who those people are. It kind of feels like the language is a little bit backwards.
Yeah, but that's a good point. You can refer them for the assessment, and anyone can refer a member for assessment of health home. So the member can refer themselves, the family of the member can refer the member, or the primary care doc can refer the member. Anybody can refer a member for the assessment of eligibility into health homes.
But if our goal, state goal, or everybody's goal, is to get more of the eligible members into the health home program, it really comes for increasing capacity in the system. We need to get more providers designated as health home providers.
Yes.
The patients are there, and they have to be willing, but maybe it's just the language that we're getting caught up in a little bit.
Well, maybe we could work with a managed care organization, Rhonda, and maybe you to tighten up the language so that it meets the intent of what the healthcare authority, because honestly, I'm not sure what the ACH is supposed to do with this. So this was an attempt to try to get at that, but it seems like it's better to refer to an assessment, but then where's the accountability in that? So.
Well, we really haven't talked about it a lot here, but, do we have a role in trying to get more providers to become health home providers? It sounds like that's what the HCA
we manage care, I'm sorry.
Yep.
We manage care organizations are recruiting care coordination organizations all the time. And it's not easy to do the outreach of the information that small community-based organizations needs to know what they need to meet in order to become that. So that would be a very natural role of the ACH to do that. What Carol and I were talking about after the leadership council today is that we're going to have meetings, individual meetings with the different NGOs, so you guys get the full picture of health homes in the region, so we can move forward. Because, for example, we have overlap. Some MCOs work with their own team, some MCOs work with the care coordination organizations. Some, like Molina, in our case, we work with both. We have local people, but we also contract with care organizations. You should have a full map of who is doing care coordination for health homes in the region, so that you can cross against the number of providers engaged in the 3 cohorts, for example, and offer the possibility or the training for the potential new care coordination organizations to join and expand the capacity.
I don't know if this helps or not, but in my experience, speak louder. Sorry for the people on the phone, you couldn't hear me. In my personal experience in the work and the outreach work that I was doing, it was difficult to navigate people into the health homes. Once I kind of figured out what that system was and what they wanted to be able to get those services engaged, it is about getting those dots and T's crossed and dotted, you know. But the thing that I found is not many of the providers were willing to do that. So I think it is getting more providers on board and getting those clients or patients assessed for those things in clinic and in their offices, more than leaving it to them to refer themselves, because 90% won't. That's just my take on it. So, and outreach is a huge, huge benefit. So maybe the MCO can talk about the care coordination and outreach with the care providers. Maybe all three come together and have support.
And if we could get you all on the same platform, that would go a long way.
Oh, don't get me started.
Leave the conversation without adding that.
It's true.
Okay, thank you, Jenna.
You're welcome. All right, so we'll take that one back. The next one is going to be added, milestone 3A1, question 3. So this kind of came off of our discussion about looking at MCO rosters and empanelment. And we got into a deep discussion in the PCW meeting about if a patient is assigned via an MCO, like whose responsibility is it to make sure that that clinic that they're assigned to has the availability to take the patient. And so we thought it would be a great idea for sites to report on their third next available appointment. And we wanted to break those appointments down by type, so an acute visit, an adult well visit, well child check, and a new patient visit. So they could just let us know, like, how many days out are those 4 types of appointments. What did you say?
I said 3 months.
3 months is an answer.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. Okay. Any comments on that one? We'll just go right down is patient survey. So Sam and I discussed this today. So we've actually kind of made another adjustment to this question as well. So originally we just asked that practices conduct a monthly practice-based survey of their patients. Originally, we wanted to add 25% that are seen in the quarter receive a survey. We got a lot of feedback on that, so we took it back and we wanted to add criteria on the return rate of the survey, and we've still gotten a little more feedback on that. So I think where we've landed is that we just want to see increased progress in the amount of patients that get a survey, and as long as they're able to make actionable quality improvement from that is what we're looking for really in this question. So we don't want it to be, oh, we handed out 1,000 surveys, we got 100 back, and so what quality improvement has resulted from that? How is the patient voice being implemented in your QI activities? That's what we want to see. So I think where we're landing with that question is that we want them to be able to tell us what quality improvement has resulted.
Well, I think that can be a challenge too, just because some organizations, have contracts in place for the outsource that's not done in-house, and so you're asking in the next month or so that we change those contracts for the next year or so, and that may or may not be that's a capacity issue that we may not be able to increase, or we're already doing a large number of patient surveys, so it's a little confusing.
So I think where we're landing is that that won't be an issue whether you have contracts that are outsourced with like Crossroads or not. So what we want to be able to see is quality improvement data. So I know for your organization, it's like the patient patient feedback, you might get those verbal or the scores per provider. What are you doing with those scores or those verbal comments?
That's just how we, I mean, no, so that, you
Yeah.
started off on one train of thought and that didn't end there, so that's. perfect.
Sorry, it's confusing because we've adjusted this like 4 times in the last 3 days.
Can I have that too?
Yeah.
So my thought on this is we struggle mightily in our community desperately to get feedback from anybody on anything, whether it's clinics, hospitals, inpatient, outpatient, ER. And we do, I think we do almost all of our stuff. When we do all of our stuff is all done through contract. Just don't answer the phone and they don't return your surveys. So to put a hard stop on it or a hard number, never happened. I mean, I will tell you now, you're gonna just have to mark all of mine off as no.
And I just kind of want to be clear with the group, we're not proposing a hard number. That's not what we're proposing. I know that's what it says up there, but we've adjusted this as of noon today.
Okay, well, you can see my confusion.
I know, I'm sorry. We didn't have the chance to adjust this.
All right, then I'll
But that's the feedback we got. That's
Yeah.
the feedback we got, which is why we made the adjustment today.
I'm sure it's the feedback you got.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So as a consumer, I think that part of this could be put into my lap because, now I receive texts for surveys. And I can tell you, I do more surveys now than I used to by email, because they would email or they would call that I would miss the call and things like that. But I know that, when I go visit my doctor and I'm receiving a text, how is that service? I'm receiving a text from my pharmacist for those surveys. I do more surveys now than text
I didn't answer the last three
for
Delta
my feedback. So that's really a great option if you're trying to get those surveys completed and keeping them within doable time, meaning that if I'm just saying that if I was a consumer and I have 3 kids and I'm trying to do this, trying to do that, keeping it within maybe a 2 to 3 minute survey time to fill them out, it helps because I know a lot of the consumers that do have those challenges, and they do tell me some. I say, hey, I got a text and I had a survey. Did you get one? And if they say yes, I ask them if they fill it out. Yeah. So that's something that's working.
Good, no, thank you.
I'm the runner.
Okay, any more feedback on that one? Not as it is written, but we have updated it as of noon today. Okay. All right, the next one is milestone 4A2, patient experience, shared decision making. And so this one, how it's written right now, we just asked them to report either a count or a rate on the number of patients who received a shared decision aid for their selected area of focus. That area of focus varies based on site. And so originally what we wanted to do was add a minimum of 25% of patients with the selected conditions that were seen in the quarter receive shared decision aid. And so what this would look like if we had a site who said patients who are depressed with a PHQ-9 score of 20 or above, and let's say there was 100 of those patients that they saw in the quarter, we would ask that 25%, so 25 patients, get a shared decision aid. What we've done and what we've landed at is that we would just like to see an increase each quarter. So quarter over quarter, if they started with 5 patients in quarter 1, in quarter 2, we want to see that go up for 5, even if it's 6, 15, whatever that might be, we want to see an increase from quarter to quarter.
Sandra?
Hold on, I'm thinking this one through.
Because I can see you grimacing.
No, I'm just thinking this one through, because I'm just thinking how the numbers change quarter to quarter. And so it's just for that quarter, numerator and denominator, you're what, the changes, correct?
Yes, so
It's not a cumulative.
Well, wait a minute, because I'm going to give it to this not cumulative.
Because how often do you, if you're using a shared decision tool, how often are you updating? You're not doing it monthly? I mean, I think the things that we do, we typically do like every 6 months.
That's true.
So did the group talk about that?
That was not a question from the group. And I
So
think,
how are you thinking about it?
so when I think about it, I'm thinking numerator and denominator form. So in quarter one, you had 100 patients who were depressed, 25 got it in quarter one. Let's say in quarter two, you would just have maybe 30 patients who got it. So we're just looking to see more patients getting that shared decision aid. Does that make sense?
Well, yes, but is the denominator cumulative?
An average?
Yeah, so the way that I would look at it is a percentage rate. So you would have your numerator, denominator, because you're identifying that the patients are going to change based upon what your PHQ score is. And so it may change, so you're be looking at the percentage rate of increase. Or as opposed to, because we don't want to say that, oh, these patients always had this, so they're always going to be our denominator, right? So we want to make sure that what you're looking at is your population base. You're identifying those patients within your organization, that whether it's you're looking at depression and you're looking at new patients only, and you're giving out that shared decision aid, that over time you're looking, identifying those patients, and increasing the rate that you're giving out those decision aids.
See, and I show on the cumulative, because if I only got to see them that one time, so this is the way I make it, if I only got to see them that one time in that first quarter, and I missed giving them, that was a missed opportunity on my provider then that we didn't give them the shared decision making. But on the next quarter, the next 100 folks that we saw that needed them, we gave, instead of 25, 50% of those people got the shared decision making tools. Then I'm showing improvement, and I'm getting better at reducing those misses.
Mm-hmm.
I might not get that first patient from the first quarter back.
Right.
Okay. Did we land on not cumulative? I just got that.
It's all about workflow, and it's about how you run your report. So,
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know yet.
Okay.
I don't either.
So we'll start next this time. Yeah. All right. So jumping to the next page. All right. Okay, so 6A1, question 3. This one, please attest that your practice is using One Health Port. We've kind of discussed this throughout this meeting a couple times already, but this was one that we added as a requirement for our site, is to be using One Health Port in some capacity, as Sam explained earlier.
Isn't it One Health Port is a possible option of different measures, or is it specifically One Health Port?
It's specifically One Health Port, so I think we broke that one down in 3 questions. So direct secure messaging, collective medical, and One Health Port.
Right.
Okay. All right, this next one, we had some discussion on, as you can tell by the notes. So that's 6A1, question 4. So this one right now, in 2019, we asked our practices to track the number of ED visits and track the patients that got follow-up contact within 1 week, patients that got contact within 72 hours of inpatient discharge. They're asked to contact 75% of those patients, and they're asked to enact care compacts or collaborative agreements with at least 2 groups of high-volume specialists. And right now, our sites can select 2 of those 3 options. The first change in 2020 is that all 3 of those options will be required. So that's our first change in 2020. The PTW had no issue with that. Where the issue came was that they questioned how applicable is it for a hospital to do follow-up contact within 1 week of ED discharge, and is it even appropriate? So where we landed on was no, that isn't appropriate, but it was suggested in the meeting maybe a hospital is better off to look at whether or not a patient has a primary care provider, and if they don't, then making a referral within their own system more than likely to a PCP. So that's where we landed with that. And also we've added a component of uploading their collected medical reports with no PHI to us in the CSI platform. So we want them to exclude that patient information and upload those reports.
So if we could go back to the previous question real quickly about One Health Port, not to bang this.
Can you use the microphone?
Oh, crap.
Sure.
not to bang the drum too much on the state HIE One Health Board, but, you know, we've said several times that we want to support adoption of the statewide HIE. We understand that it's not a perfect solution. There's been some provider concerns in the past that One Health Board is trying to address. But Sam, do you want to speak a little bit more about that?
Yes, in our mid assessment on our application that we actually have to fill out, one of the areas is that we have to support that, and so we write on that. About the healthcare authority, also on our data leads committee meeting, we're also looking at the encouragement of the One Health Board. So this is our attempt, again, to meet the healthcare authority's demand for us to be able to support that.
Okay. I think I heard a wow from Brian.
Yep. So how are we going to upload all that information in the system?
So collected medical, when you use collected medical, there's an option to just export that, the report that they give you where it shows your ED, patients who went to the ED, you would just upload that export. So it's exporting it out of collected medical, which is pretty easy to do from the screens that I've seen, and then you would just upload from the CSI platform. So we're not asking you to make a new report, we just want to see that one.
And just to be clear, we're not asking for PHI.
No, I know that. I'm thinking of all the nuances that might go
Not
wrong.
quite as easy as seamless.
Yeah, that's like 5 people I ain't got.
Okay.
I don't know, I mean, maybe I just don't understand it, but, and it's not just my hospital, it's like all the hospitals.
So one of the challenges that we're finding, and I would guess that you guys probably are too, when we go into collective medical, anybody that's had any touch with our TIN, the tax ID number, gets attributed to us. So if they're a WIC client, they go to our homeless resource center, they come in for basic food, or, you know, the HEN program. So we have thousands of people that are attributed to us that have never touched a medical provider.
Right.
And we've talked to collective medical about that ad nauseum. We still haven't figured that out. So I mean, that's been as we've been doing our reporting, that's been a huge issue for us. You know, farm workers, you've got NCAC, so I suspect that you've got a huge number also.
We got a lot of WIC too.
A lot of WIC. So a lot of people that have been to the emergency room that are attributed to you, that your name shows up in the system for collective medical. And I think any organization that's got other programs besides medical, we need to figure out how we sort that through, or you're going to get a bunch of garbage in your system.
Right. I think we're just looking for some validation of the work process. There's an easier way to do that. Let's discuss it.
I'm up for finding easier ways to do it, and I appreciate and agree that we need the information, we just don't know how to get it. It's really my thought. So maybe we find a way to, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I support the idea, I just don't think that, I think we're trying to get too detailed in how we're going to get to it. It's when I start to see this kind of stuff, that's usually what's going on.
So can I ask, what are your thoughts on the like ED follow-up kind of as it stands this year?
I think the ED follow-up is probably okay.
So it kind of sounds like the issue is with the upload of the report.
I think it's the uploading of the reports, because then you start reporting on everything. I'm just concerned about what happens next downstream, and how many different ways we can screw that up. Because there's a lot.
I think the best place to start,
Sorry.
is helping the hospitals identify who the PCPs are.
I like that.
That's a huge issue, at least in Yakima.
Sure, it is with us too. And yeah, it absolutely is, because many times there's the emergency room is the PCP, and I think ultimately that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yes, and so that's why we changed the 6A1 option A for the hospital. So we don't want the hospital to do those follow-up calls, because that really doesn't make make sense. But we want them to do exactly what you said,
Right.
try and see who doesn't have a PCP and hopefully make a referral
But
to a PCP.
even before then, you know, I mean, we get a lot of discharge summaries that discharge workers think are patients that belong to us that we've never seen.
Right.
And so if there's any process improvements that could happen, just starting with, you know, how do they look in provider one to see who this patient is assigned to? I mean, there's just tons of that goes on, just sorting out where the patient belongs.
Yeah, I agree. I like the idea of the referral to the PCP. That makes a great deal of sense. We can incorporate that in. It's not easy, but it's doable.
Don't go anywhere.
So from my experience, when a patient is at the emergency room, and I've been there too many times to count, if they do a referral, generally the emergency room is not going to follow up with that patient. What I think would be cleaner is if that referral was not only given to the patient to follow up with the PCP, but the PCP also given that same referral so they can make the return contact. Because if I'm referred to a specialist, my specialist sets that appointment, gets the clearance through my MCO, and then contacts me with an appointment so that I can do that. If I'm not contacted within 2 weeks of the referral, I contact them, but that's me versus somebody else out on the street. Okay, so I would think that not only the referral should be given to the patient, but also to the PCP that they're referring out to, because emergency rooms are considered the PCP if they don't have a PCP in place. They use that as their healthcare, and that's ongoing. So, because they can get immediate care, where in clinic they're not getting that immediate care. And so if they're not sick, they're not going to see a PCP, and if they're not seeing a PCP, the emergency room is quicker. They might have to wait a couple of hours, but they get seen that day. And a lot of the clinics have cut it off at 3 days, 3 times no show, means that you've got to sit there all day and wait for an appointment if that appointment comes available for you. So a lot of people get caught up in those things. If you're homeless, you don't know if you're going to make it to that appointment 3 weeks out. You know, there's a lot of complications to it. But I think that it's trying to bring that to fruition. A follow-up needs to come from the PCP referred and patient outreach. Because if it's not that, you're not going to get any kind of numbers going. They're going to continue to do the same thing.
Did you comment?
I don't know. I guess I do. I guess one thought that I had from a few minutes ago is regarding the upload of the export out of collective medical. Not everybody has access to collective medical, even within an organization, right? So you're talking about a limited number of individuals within an organization. So I think to Brian's point, that's pretty onerous. As far as referrals, and I don't mean to be a pessimist, but I heard you, Les, for example, we just discovered a person that we've been trying to make contact with. She had been one of our high utilizers, you know, obviously using the ED as her PCP, and I'd pretty much just all but given up, and then I just happened to peek in collective medical yesterday, and lo and behold, she's now in Plainview, Texas.
Mm.
What good does that do? That doesn't do us any good here, right? I mean, and what amount of time is a PCP that has received a referral going to spend trying to track somebody down that's in Plainview, Texas? They're not, right? They don't know where they're at. So anyway, I just see a lot of, this is where case management comes in, right?
Yeah.
If anything, identify a case manager that does the tracking down and the referral connection.
Someone.
So where do we?
And we're going to take this one back and make an update.
Yeah.
perfect. I still honestly believe that CHW work is a great placement. Like, CHW work is really a great placement out in the community and through organizations so that they can do the outreach, they can do follow up, they can take care of that at mental hospital, to the hospital, to the clinic. Overall, you'll see more utilization of the clinic than you are at advocacy because you have that outreach, and you have that trust building between a patient and their case manager or their community health worker. They're going to do that follow-up. But if you don't have that, and you're still waiting on the client to make the decision, that client is just going to walk away because, oh, well, I'm okay, because nobody cares enough. Because a lot of people in the system, that's what they feel like. Because the system has been running for so long, they continue to think that it's broken. It is not fixable. They're not going to get the health care. They're not going to get the care that they're looking for. And they don't even at this point care anymore. So that's why they go to emergency room. You know, so how do you fix that? You fix that with somebody that can do outreach, somebody that they can become trusting with, and somebody that's going to help them through the care with good outcomes.
So in the interest of time, I think we're going to move forward.
Just real quickly, I know this is going to go back to the practice transformation work group, and hopefully I'll be at the next meeting, but I'd like to see a part of this discussion just involve HIE, in terms of the interoperability of information, because if information, whether it's from a primary care provider or a hospital, if we can accomplish the whole issue of interoperability, then it doesn't matter where the person is or who wants to get to it, we would solve that. And I know, this next year is going to be a big year for that with some of the new, the 21st century insurance requirements. We're going to have to get there. And so at least that feels like that should be part of it.
Yeah. Integration.
And one last thing we want to clarify is that, in regards to collective medical, we have been working with NCO sponsors to make sure that all of our organizations are getting this, and that's been kind of an ongoing, battle. So we need to make sure that they get sponsored, and it's not an NCO issue or a collective medical issue, it's just all around, just trying to make sure that it's good.
I'd say it's a little bit of a CMT issue. We have the capacity to deploy, but that's just my opinion. But I just want to say, in the interest of time, that Ron is right, Eric is right, and Jen is right. There's not a silver bullet for this. We have been working at the Health Homes program with over 20,000 eligible members, trying to find them using CMT as the best practice. I think Ron has a very good practice using internally CMT. We have case managers everywhere. We have community connectors, CHWs, that try to find the people. We're not going to create a perfect spreadsheet that covers everything, because finding these folks is difficult. Having them helping themselves is sometimes difficult, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just that the reason why the Health Homes program has been effective is because it keeps trying, but it's also the reason why the engagement is not at 60%, but rather at 30%, because it's a hard job to do. So I would say we can continue to wrestle this spreadsheet forever. We're never going to touch on the perfect answer for all the languages. I think we just need to work.
Okay.
Sure, that's right.
Thank you, Jorge.
That's everything.
Okay, thank you. Good.
Thanks, Jenna.
Yeah, thanks.
Good next month, right? Yeah. Okay. So we've got one more agenda item with this. But we've got about 20 minutes. So Carol, or Becky and Rachel, I guess, we're going to talk about the 2020 operations budget.
Hello, Becky.
So, you guys have to the proposed 2020 budget? So what you have in front of you is the proposed 2020 budget, and it looks a little bit different than the budgets that we've had in the past years. We had a discussion with the finance committee about changing the look of the budget to match what is actually in our QuickBooks software.
So that's what this is pulled from, that's where we pull our financials out of, so we just thought it'd be easier to have the budget listed in. So, the first column is the proposed 2020 budget, and then we also put in there, what the 2019 budget was and what the 2019 actuals are as of November 19th. And then I also made a notes column to kind of explain the message to our madness for getting this budget together. So, Carol, did you do this? So what, we don't have this as an action item for you guys. We want to show it to you and have you look at it, and I can walk through it if you want me to. I know we're short on time. And then in December, we'll put it on as an action item. It's Thursday. Okay, no suggestions. Okay, we'll start with that. So the first item on there is a, you see is our restricted funds, which is money that revenue that we had come in from, one was from the Healthcare Authority contract, one from the Amerigroup, and so those two items we didn't spend completely in 2019, so we're rolling over to 2020, and we're proposing that we possibly are going to need to talk about new car leases next year, because you guys know we lease two cars and they have a mileage limit, and we're approaching that already. And so, you know the navigators travel a lot. So we're proposing to use those funds in 2020 for possibly new cars. We don't have a plan for that yet, and we're not ready to talk about a plan for that. It's just, we're just planning for it, budgeting for it. Going on down the lens, so when we had our financial audit this year with Moss Adams, they didn't like that we were taking the loan payments out of our operations budget and recommended that we move it to district funding. So that's why for 2020, you see zeros there. We're going to pay the loans out of district for 2020 instead of out of our operations budget, to be consistent with the other contracts that we have. Let's see. Next is our sponsorship fund. You all know we've had a lot of use of that sponsorship fund this year. Well, a lot. It looks like $15,000. So we're proposing that we keep that at 30, which is what we had for 2019. It's one of the items that Lauren has been working on a lot with Ruben, and we get those sponsorships for community events. We've also been going and catering, and so we feel like it's been a really great venture for GCACH to get out there and network with our community. So we'd like to keep that for next year. Staff salaries, we have that at just over $1 million this year, and you can see where in the notes column how that money was, how we came up with that number. We had our actual salaries for 2019 is going to be $960,000 by the time we get to the end of the year. And we're proposing a 2% salary increase for the staff, which is $19,200. And then we're considering hiring another full-time employee possibly mid-year. So that's where that money came from.
I'm sorry, I don't see any room for benefits increases, and I know that those kinds of things sometimes increase greater than your CPIs. So I don't know if 2% is enough, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Just an idea again.
We,
3.5 or something.
no, there was something else. We actually spoke to that in,
Leslie actually spoke to that in the finance committee.
okay.
As I recall, we had a separate line item for benefits. And I think there was a discussion about going back and ensuring that they had a number, like you can get a projected number for the benefits themselves. This was straight salary increase, right?
Okay.
So it's a 2%. That made sense. And so we all talked about that. You did have I think you all had like a benefit value cost of healthcare.
We do, and that's all out on the financials. So that $960,000 for our salaries for 2019, that includes our benefits.
That's what I thought. That's why I thought that you would need 3.2 or 3.5 to hit the benefits and the salary increase. That was my
Exactly. Okay, well, I misinterpreted what you're saying. It's fine. But you'll still get the numbers associated with the benefit increases, cost of insurance going up. But the 2% is specifically contemplated for employee.
Yes,
Okay.
for a salary.
So probably more work on that, I would think, but we know that's there.
Okay. Thank you for the question.
It's good.
Let's see, next we have, so on our 2019 budget, we had a line item for our contracted services, which for 2019 was OHSU, EWU for service facilitators, and a couple other contracts. And then we have a separate line item for professional development, and so professional services. So this year we're combining that together, so we won't have our contract services line. We're pulling in the consultants and the IT and the accounting and audit and lawyer fees all together with our contracts that we have and accounting stages. So we're proposing the budget for that for $150,000, which is less than what we did in 2019. Next is our internet, and you can see in my notes that that's based off of our actual monthly bill. Written utilities, same thing, it's based off of our actual bill that we were paying for the year times the 12 months for the year. Cell phones, same thing, based off our actual bill, and then also adding another additional line if we do end up hiring another employee. Website maintenance, same thing, based off of our bill. And you can see in the notes that we were predicting a slight increase in that for next year because our community resilience campaign, we're going to add a new page to our website. So there's going to be a little bit more of website management for that. Subscription. So on this line, we had originally thought about budgeting $10,000 for that. So that's our QuickBooks subscriptions, Adobe T-Sheets, which is how we put in our daily time card. And then we added another $10,000 to that to make it 20 because we have a request from West to possibly purchase Tableau. So we're looking into that and doing some research on that software. So there's a possibility of purchasing that, so we just budgeted for it. Next, office technology. That's just basic monitors, keyboards, mice, things that break. As we talked about with our financials for this month, we purchased the new laptops for a lot of staff. So we don't have, I don't think there's going to be any major expenses there, but we want to make sure that the staff, with all the traveling we do, we're covered and we have what we need to for that. Next is our contract with Abadam, which is our printer, which you guys see, we do a lot of printing. Again, that's based off of our actual bill. The office supplies, we took that down a little bit for this year. We're just budgeting $10,000 because we budgeted $20,000 last year and we've only spent $7,500 this year, so we can do how much money for next year. Food lunch activities, we didn't bring that down too much. We brought it down to $9,000, and that's based off of us using United Way more than we use CDC. So we talked to you guys about that being part of our reasons for moving, and so that we could use United Way and get away from CDC. So we wanted to show you that we took that down a little bit. Marketing, communications, that is a budget that Lauren is managing, and she presented to Carol a very detailed description of how she planned on using that $20,000. We talked about it with the finance committee in detail, and they all seemed to think that was a reasonable number. Staff training, again, we had this on last year as well, the professional development for the staff. I think that's going really well this year. Carol and I are working on changing the policy a little bit, so the way that the staff can access those funds is going to be a little bit different. We've been talking to NHS about how they use their staff for those staff. So Carol and I are working on that, so you guys will see that soon. We're gonna change it just a little bit. And then the last section that you see there is all funding that we have from 2019 that we're rolling into 2020 for our learning collaboratives, our internship program that we just passed the policy today, and our summit and convening. So that's nothing new to the budget for 2020, just a rollover from 2019. And then in the last item again, our grant writer. That hopefully we will utilize this year. I have a feeling that we will. So we have a total budget for this year of a little over 2.1 million, which you can see is down from last year's 2.9. And then you can see our actual 1.3. So again, this was just for you guys to look at. If you have any recommendations, changes, suggestions, we're open for discussion on that. And then we'll vote on for
Thanks, Becky. It was a great presentation. We did want to generate some conversation around the LIN and coming out of district dollars as opposed to coming out of operational dollars. So we wanted to highlight that.
Are there any downsides to doing that? Do you see a disadvantage?
Not that.
What about the board?
No.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's coming out of incentive dollars as opposed to coming out of design funds. So, you know, in the past, last year and this year, a significant amount, $360,000 has come out of operations money, as opposed to next year, it would come out of the actual money that the providers are earning. That again, this is based on a recommendation from the accounting firm, from our auditing firm. So we just wanted to make sure that you guys understood where those dollars would be coming from, and the same thing with staff salaries come out of the district fund and not the operational fund.
Carol, I don't think this is something that's unique to the Greater Columbia. I think other major villages are doing something similar to in terms of directing district dollars into operations.
The only question I have is with their travel, you have cohort 3 coming on, so you have quite a few more sites. Do you need to look at, because you're keeping the budget, looks like it's the same that you had for 2019.
But you've gone farther than that.
Yeah, and you've gone above that already. I don't know if that's something that you want to.
So part of that came from holding 2 summits in Yakima where all of the staff traveled and all the staff stayed in motels for a couple of nights. We don't foresee that large of expenses for next year. The travel for the navigators, though, is something that Rachel's going to work on between now and December so that we can really break down how much is being generated by the navigators versus how much is being generated by just travel by the staff. And again, going back to some of the policies that we're looking at with GCACH is deciding who all needs to attend the meetings. I mean, we're getting big enough now that sending all 11 people to one meeting might be a little bit excessive, and so the way that GCACH does it is that they have a committee that looks at, you know, who should be traveling, you know, to what meetings, because it is a hardship when we've got all of us going to one meeting and it takes everybody out of the office, right? Especially if it's an overnight meeting. So that was one of the reasons that I think that our travel exceeded our expenses from this year.
Other final comments on the budget before we go to our last agenda item? We'll see this again next month. Good job. Thank you, Becky. Okay, so the Provider Recognition Award budget, is that Becky again?
Yeah,
Okay,
no, it
did
should have
this
been
start
Lauren.
right the first time? We'll let you do it again.
This is actually should have been Lauren. As you guys know, the board gave us a budget of $20,000 for our provider recognition. And as always, Lauren did a really great job of tracking all the expenses and the balance that was left. So we did spend the $20,000, and so Lauren just really wanted to show you guys that, you know, we were good stewards of that money that you gave us for that recognition dinner. We all had a good time. I think everyone that attended seemed to have a good time. We gave out some nice awards. We had really great food. And last year when we did this, we reported back to you what the actuals were on that budgeted amount, and that's what this is again this year, just to show you that what we spent and what we didn't spend.
It's really good.
Yeah.
And what was the
guys were requesting?
Originally, it was $20,000.
Okay, I thought it was a different number.
As part of that, savings, unfortunately, we had, I think, 91 people RSVP, but we only had 65 people. So there was a bit of a heartache about the number of people that didn't show up that had RSVP. So I think that happens, we'll, try again next year to make sure that those RSVPs, if they're really coming or not, because that's pretty expensive to order that much food and then not have as many people show. I know.
Okay, so, that takes us to the end of our agenda. Are there any final comments from anyone?
So we're gonna have the next meeting for December be a teleconference. You know, it's December, so with holidays and weather, it might be a little easier on everyone. So everyone's all right with that? December meeting will be a teleconference.
Or for those people who want to attend, you can come to the office and we can have lunch together.
Not for the lunch.
If there's anyone on the phone, if there's anyone still on the phone, are there any final thoughts or comments?
Good meeting today.
And thank you, Melissa.
I just wanted to give a little heads up of thank you for the community health dollars to go to small rural communities with the CARCAV passing. It will have a great effect on our local travel and our transit. And the hospital in Garfield do not have their levy also. And so we'll stay tuned on that, but the combination of those two things in Garfield County is immensely affect in the coming months. In that transportation, we got 29,000 of community health dollars for medical transport that could come in very, very handy. So thank you. Great.
Anyone else? With that was a full agenda. Thank you, everyone, for your attention, and we will all talk next month.